great. Is the mic on? All right. Testing, testing. Okay. So good morning, everybody. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes to see if anybody else comes in. Thanks, everybody, for wearing your mask. Some of the rules about the room. We do ask that you wear a mask when you're, sitting in the chair and so forth. When you come up and speak, if you need to come up and speak, feel free to remove your mask to speak, and then you can put it back on when you're done speaking. This meeting is going to be recorded, and it's going to be available on a PPACG website, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. It's also being live streamed for those that were not comfortable coming to the meeting in person, so that we are giving them an opportunity. I don't know how many people are actually going to do that. Might be a handful, might be nobody at all, but we're offering it anyway. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Fair enough.
Again, please remember to sign in if you haven't already, and if you parked in the parking garage, you got one of these things, you need one of these things to get it validated so you don't have to pay. If you parked on the street and you already paid, I can't help you. You can shake me down, but I think all I got is $1, so you're kind of on your own there. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm John with PPACG. If you've never been in this building before, the bathrooms are right out this door and right straight that way, and you'll be all set. So I think we're going to get started very soon. So thank you all very much.
Oh,
that's yours for the day, and that's Rich's for the day, and that's for everybody else.
Okay. All right. Testing, testing. Okay, great. So good morning, everybody. How you doing? Let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming. I think most of you know me, but just in case, I'm Stan Vanderwerf. I'm the El Paso County Commissioner for the West Side. And Precinct 837, all of the properties that are west of Highway 115 are all in my district. So I think it's a pleasure that you all are here. Thank you for being here. When we knew we were trying to set this meeting up, we were trying to figure out where to hold this meeting. As you may know, we were thinking about PPACG, but we didn't think we were going to have a big enough venue because they do not have as large a meeting space as this is here, as you can see. And just a little bit about this particular meeting room. Maybe some of you are very familiar with it, but for those of you that are not, this is my boardroom for the county, and we hold our meetings in here, our Board of County Commissioner meetings in here every Tuesday at 9 a.m. And I'm the chair of that board. So we all sit back here, and we've been actually holding in-person meetings the entire time through COVID, except for basically March and April while we were trying to figure out how to hold meetings. And then we got the plexiglass and other things placed in here. So we've been holding in-person meetings since then. And as far as I know, we've never had an outbreak from this room, so that's really great. And as you all know, we're on our way to getting out of, this pandemic. but we just have to remain vigilant. All right. So as you all know, this is going to be when I found out that CDOT was doing a lot of work, or going to be doing a lot of work on Highway 115. And I thought that maybe it would be important that you all got an opportunity to hear what that is, and have an opportunity to ask questions about what that is, and then also have an opportunity to talk to CDOT about, whatever they're not doing, that you can talk about, what you think might still need to be done, if there are any requirements like that, and so forth and so on. So we're going to kind of go through that conversation. This is an informal meeting today, but basically we're going to start with some introductions. Then we'll ask Mr. Richard Zamora, who's to my left here. He's a CDOT employee. He's going to give you the presentation, which is a pretty thorough presentation about what is going to be taking place this year on 115. And then once we're through that, then we're going to be very, very interested in your questions to make sure that you have a complete and full understanding about what CDOT is doing. So I also want to thank the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And I don't see Andy here, but John Liasatos is here. He's over here. Raise your hand. So John works on infrastructure and highway issues for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And for those of you that don't know what PPACG is, it is an area council. The board is comprised of elected officials coming from counties and municipalities that it represents. Now, that includes 3 counties. So that's El Paso here, it's Teller County, and it's also Park County. So we go quite distant going west with the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And then it also represents, I think the number is at 13 municipalities? 16 municipalities. So the city of Colorado Springs and a whole host of other smaller municipalities within those 3 parks. That's a government agency that deals extensively with a lot of different issues that come up within those 3 counties. So that includes, working on roads. And so, again, when I was thinking about setting this up, I thought it would be great to have PPACG host this. So even though we're holding this meeting in our boardroom, and that's because of size, officially PPACG is hosting this meeting. So I want to express my appreciation to them for helping to do that. And if you don't know much about PPACG, I would encourage you to meet Mr. Liasatos after this meeting, or get his business card or whatever and give him a call later, and you can learn more about what goes on in that organization. Now, we have 3 elected officials. I don't see any others that are in the room right now, so I'd like to start with introductions and make sure the elected officials have a chance to identify themselves for you. Most of you may know all 3 of us, but let's just make sure we go through the introductions. And then I'd actually like to go around the room and if you could just mention your name, and be very brief if you don't mind, because we've got a large number of people here. But this will be really good, I think, for Richard to kind of hear a little bit about who you all are, if you own a business in the area, because I know we have a gentleman here that runs a campground in the area, and then if there's anything else that you think might be pertinent. So I've introduced myself already, so if we could go ahead and ask Mary Bradfield to introduce herself. Mary, there's a microphone right behind you there.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. I am the representative for House District 21, which includes Precinct 839 on the west side of 115. Thank you.
I'm Sharon Thompson. I'm on the PPACG board. I'm the first vice chair. I also am a city council member in the city of Fountain. One of the things that transfers back and forth between Colorado Springs and Fountain every year is the federal transit coordinator position. So that is when I got involved with this, knowing this was going to come and talking about we need to withstand. We all need to be getting together. I have been to several of your fantastic barbecues you have over at the fire station at 115. If you ever get invited to one of their barbecues or potlucks, go with a good appetite. They cook unbelievable amounts of food, and there's plenty for everybody. Plus, they have a great chili cook-off every year too. I've attended several of those with former state representative Lois Landgraf. So you have a great community over there, and I look forward to working with you guys on this project.
And for your awareness, I'm the chair of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments as well, and Sharon is my first vice chair. So you're looking at the chair and the first vice chair of PPACG. We're both here representing PPACG as well. Please.
Thank you, Chair Vanderwerth. My name is Lisa Torman Hickey. I'm Transportation Commissioner for District 9 in Colorado, which includes El Paso, Teller, Fremont, and Park counties. There's not a direct overlap with PPACG. And so thank you very much for coming. We're very interested to hear what you think about what CDOT's plans are. And I appreciate the PPACG for hosting, and certainly the county for hosting.
And before we continue through, well, first of all, I'll make a point. For the introductions, let's maybe not pass the mic around, because that'll be hand on hand on hand on the mic. And it's not essential that we record, you know, your own introduction in this meeting. But when you have a question after CDOT is done giving a presentation, if you could come down, because if it goes into the mic, it'll get recorded so that people will be able to hear it that want to watch it later. But for the introductions right now, we'll just move on through. And I do want to mention our Transportation Commissioner, Lisa Hickey. She's brand new to the Transportation Commission. This is a statewide board. And I think was it in your very first meeting? You helped us get the Research Parkway and Powers Interchange refunded. We lost the funding during COVID last year, big project. It's taking a traffic-like intersection and turning it into a grade-separated intersection. It doesn't have that much bearing on where you all live down south, but in the northeast, it is a huge traffic area with huge backups, and it really needed to have grade separation. So we did a whole bunch of great work in PPACG to try to get the funding back in line. Lisa Hickey was able to take those requirements and some commitments from local government, take that to the Transportation Commission, and get the rest of it refunded by the state. And so we lost that funding and got it back, and that construction is going to be starting this spring, I believe, or maybe summer. So that, by the way, is the #1 transportation priority listed on the PPACG books right now, because it's tens of thousands of people that sit in that traffic light and wait day after day after day when they're trying to get to work. So Lisa did a great job for us on that. And then I'll just continue to go around. We'll go up this way and then down this way. So please, sir, go ahead. Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Great. Great, thank you. It is. Yeah. I didn't mean to diss anybody that's on the east side of 115. You are specifically included for this meeting, okay? There we go. Outstanding. Go ahead. Did we invite? I think we invited them. Thank you. Great, thank you. Outstanding. Thank you, Jack. Okay.
Jim Fain, I live next to these turkeys.
Y'all are smiling though, so that's good.
RJ Steer representing the May family. We own
Great. By the way, a second organization or house or business on the east side. Thank you. Great. Thank you for being here. Great. Thank you, Claire, for being here. All right. Thank you very much. I think we've got a fairly decent representation of folks. And, of course, not everybody that lives down there is down there. So once we get through this meeting, please, I would encourage you to share it with the other residents that you might be friends with down in that area to make sure that they know. And we'll make sure that we let you know exactly where you can find this recording. So that when you go home, you know, it'll be available. You'll be able to look at it later in case you want to go back and reference anything. So we'll make sure that we do that. Is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about before we have Richard Zamora get started on the CDOT presentation? So that blind does go down. Can you... So normally it goes down, but it's broken today, so our apologies for that. It's probably a little bit tougher for the folks over here to see that. I imagine if it's a different angle being over there. So if anybody's having trouble seeing the screen, feel free to move over. One thing also to let you know, not that it's necessarily easy from the audience, but it is also, this presentation is also up on this screen here. So if you're having trouble seeing that, you could maybe move to some place to look at this screen. And by the way, the setup, the water, the chairs was from a previous meeting. We didn't set it up that way, but since it's an informal meeting, if you'd actually like to look at this presentation and come down and sit in one of these chairs, please feel free to do that. Okay, so at this time, how about if we go ahead and get started on the CDOT presentation. Richard, I appreciate very much what you're going to present to the residents here about what the plans are for CDOT on 115 this year. So thank you very much, and we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwerf, and thanks everybody for coming out to this meeting this morning and taking time out of your Saturday to even come up into the Springs, living down south. So definitely really appreciate it. So we've got a very, very brief presentation, but the whole purpose of today is really to seek some feedback. We've got a project that we're just in the very early stages of designing and hoping to, benefit all the citizens, everybody who lives along 115. So we are definitely seeking feedback. As you came into the room, there's some maps up top, and we have some sticky notes that are assigned there. And as you think about this and you have some ideas of what you would like to see as part of the project, feel free to make notes on that and place it on the appropriate place on those maps. So with that, we just have a very few slides. First of all, again, my name is Richard Zamora. I'm the Region 2 Transportation Director, so for Southeast Colorado, so basically cover basically from top of Monument Hill all the way down to New Mexico, out east to Kansas, and a line that runs, all the way through Park County and down through Levita Pass and all that area. So relatively large geographic area. I have a lot of good staff that work with me in Region 2 with CDOT. Scott Schnocke was supposed to be here giving this presentation this morning. He's the resident engineer here in Colorado Springs that's actually working on this project. Unfortunately, he had a family member test positive for COVID late Thursday, so he's officially in quarantine today. So I think we all appreciate him not coming to share with us from that perspective. So this morning, too, I also want to recognize Jason. You're up there helping greet people come into the room. We have Jason Nelson. He is the Region 2 traffic engineer. So he does a lot of our traffic data analysis, a lot of our safety analysis for the region. I understand folks have a lot of concerns along 115. There's a lot of concerns, as I understand it, with intersection safety being one major element, as well as pavement condition are probably the two biggest things that I've heard about from my staff. And the good news is we are working on a project. We're currently designing a project today that we're hoping will take care of some of those issues for you. I think one thing I need to counter with is, Right now, we're pretty comfortable in terms of the funding being solid to actually go to construction next year in 2022. But it's not going to be certain probably until about the May or June timeframe of this year. It's relying upon Senate Bill 267, which is basically a bonding program. So the bonds need to be issued. We're anticipating those to be issued in May. And hopefully all the revenues come in as we're anticipating, and we will be under construction next year for this project. So we've identified, at the highest level, $42 million to do work on this particular corridor, stretching from mile marker 18 up to mile marker 39. We're not entirely certain. As I said, we're very early in the design, so still figuring out exactly what the scope of the project is, and whether or not we're going to be able to cover the entire limits from 18 to 39, or if we're going to have to cut that short in order to fit within budget. So project scope right now, where we're at right now is we're working on a life cycle cost analysis for pavement type stuff, and doing a major safety evaluation of the corridor, and looking at all the intersections and the issues, and where we have accidents, where we have issues with lack of passing lanes, and those kinds of things that create safety issues on the corridor. We're looking to do likely some pavement reconstruction or major rehabilitation from mile markers 24 to 39, so 15 miles of pavement work. We are looking to incorporate a mobile weigh station along the corridor. I think as we're all aware, there's a number of quarries up and down the corridor, and providing a safe place for a state patrol to be able to do checking weights and those kinds of things to make sure that we're not seeing a lot of overweight vehicles. We're looking at doing some widening to some 4 lanes to provide some passing lanes in some areas from mile marker 37.5 to 39. Looking to do a lot of bridge work on this project as well, doing an actual bridge replacement at Rock Creek, and then doing some bridge rehabilitation on a number of structures, looking at the bridge joints, the decks and those kinds of things, and make sure the surfaces are in good condition, and we can pave over those too. And then a number of other safety improvements, as I said, looking at all the intersections where there might be some needed acceleration lanes or deceleration lanes to help with folks turning into the various communities that are up and down the corridor. So under the current design progress, we're very early on right now. I heard some people as they were coming in saying they saw a lot of folks out there doing some survey. So that's one of the first steps of actually designing a project, is figuring out, what are the lateral constraints and those kinds of things along the project. So we are working on roadway survey. We're collecting a bunch of data in terms of the pavement conditions, what the pavement's like down deep, the soil conditions underneath, those kinds of things. So we can actually design a pavement section and what we're going to do in terms of treatments. Looking at crash data analysis, doing a lot of traffic counts. And then today is actually a great opportunity for us to seek input on corridor issues and concerns from people that live up and down the corridor. After we gather all of that data, kind of how we progressed the design is we take all the ideas we're going to hear about today and things we have in our own minds as the engineering folks, and put those into project components and actually start working hard on the design, developing a set of project plans so we can advertise a project for construction. And as part of this process, we need to balance everything, all the desired improvements, with what we have available for budget as well. And so we're going to be figuring out the best way to do that and making some decisions. And we don't want to leave everybody in the dark to, try to figure out what that looks like on your own. So we're actually thinking about, we're going to hold another one of these forums once we're a little bit further down the road in terms of design, so you can hear exactly the scope that we're developing and we're proposing to construct. So in terms of project schedule, we started design collecting some of that very preliminary information in November of 20, which was very, very late last year. We're hoping to finish up design in January of 22 and go to construction, advertise for construction shortly thereafter, with the hope that the project will be under construction next summer, so summer of 22. We're hoping we'll have a contractor on board and actually building the work and the improvements. As I said before, that again is dependent upon funding. But right now, we're fairly confident, and the Transportation Commission is fairly confident that funding is going to be coming along as well. Some of the key design considerations, as I said, we're looking at intersection safety. Safety in general is our number one priority as a department, making sure that our citizens and the traffic on the roads are able to get through the corridor in a safe manner. So looking at the intersections, looking at the roadway, looking at things in the roadside, is there a need for some guardrail or for some slope flattening, those kinds of things, pavement condition, bridge longevity, and of course the volume of truck traffic on that corridor is pretty high, as we're all aware, because of the quarries in the area. So as part of the analysis process, again, we're collecting a ton of data right now, looking at various things, the accident history, traffic counts, going out doing physical site visits, measuring some stuff, looking at the site constraints. You know, there's a lot of things we might want to do, but, you know, if we're up against, you know, a relatively large hillside, you know, that becomes very, very expensive in terms of how to, you know, remove that material and be able to widen things. And again, everything needs to align within a project budget. And as I said, that project budget right now is $42 million. We've identified a number of intersections right now, some of the more major ones that have some higher volumes, that we're looking at very, very closely in terms of doing some safety improvements, whether that be accel, decel lanes, you know, or just at least providing a full width shoulders, people to pull out of traffic, to be able to make the turn, those kinds of things. So we're looking at Old Canyon City Road, Glen Rock Drive, Calle del Fuente, Roca Roja, Paseo Corto, Rancho Pavo, and Tierra Roja. So, you know, if you folks have some other ideas of things you would like to see, if there's some intersections that we're not looking hard enough at from your perspective, you know, feel free to make those notes on the maps that we have up out front. And so we were going to originally be doing a Google Earth kind of fly-through of the corridor. Unfortunately, I'm not tech enough to do that. Scott Schnocke was supposed to be doing that for me. And so I'm not going to be able to do that today. But again, feel free to leave comments on the maps with sticky notes. I also put some business cards up front for Scott Schnocke, who is the actual person that's doing the design work on this particular project. So his business cards are up top and available. And we also have his office phone number here if you would like to reach out to him and just discuss very specific concerns with him individually. So that is really the end of the presentation. And I think we're open to take questions, hear concerns, and really just have a conversation. So.
Great. So if we could, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, since we just kind of went through the charts pretty quick, could we maybe start at the beginning and go through the charts again? Because maybe we can take an opportunity for citizens to comment to every chart specifically. So if we could maybe just, like obviously that's the front chart, but we could just kind of get through them again. Let's go to the next one. And so as we, I think some of these charts are going to be more relevant to have conversations about, but any comments on this chart? Yes, sir, please, come on up.
Hi. Your briefing is very general. It didn't tell us anything about when, where, or how. And so my question is, I have two questions. Number one, my wife has back surgery. I can't drive down 115 to Colorado Springs because it drives her back ape. So the truck traffic from the quarry has torn up the inside road going north from the quarry all the way to Colorado Springs. You people came in there and you patched some of it earlier in the year. The patches are already gone. So now, how come you can't put a patch down without the patch falling apart in 3 months with alligatoring all next to where the patch is and the holes? Now, if you drive down from Turkey Canyon on the right side of the road, there's big holes right there. And so everybody going, all you got to do is get on that road and watch them. Everybody drives off into the edge of the road because they can't run along the normal pathway because the holes are too damn big and it tears up the front of the cars. And so you said you're going to do construction starting in 2022. What construction? And what are you going to do about the road in between 2022? I mean, what you're currently doing, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, because I have to maintain the roads at Turkey Canyon. And so I know what it takes to maintain a road. You guys aren't putting patches down worth the Tinker's Dam. Now, that's just a fact. And all you got to do is drive down. The trucks are eating it up. And so the trucks coming south, that part of the road's not that bad. So what do you fix? The south part of the road. How about fixing the north part of the road where the trucks are just eating it all up because that's when they got the weight on the trucks? And how about giving us a list of when you're going to start repairing that side of the road and those holes? I mean, there's holes out there that are that big around, and they've been there. And then, please explain to me how come you can't put a patch down and have it last more than 3 months? So I'm frustrated, okay? I really am. In this briefing, I mean, all due respect, sir, it's so damn general it doesn't say anything. And I want to know when I can get in my car from Turkey Canyon and go to Colorado Springs with my wife with a brand new back surgery and be able to drive. I can't do it right now. She's been in the house for 9 months because I can't get on that stupid road because it's too full of holes. And if I go slow enough so I can avoid the roads, then the traffic is unreal and everybody starts screaming and they start doing wild things like passing on the yellow line, trucks passing on the yellow line. All that stuff's going on, and it's a hazard. So I have to stay off the road. Now, that's personal, doesn't have anything to do with you and your job or the state or anything else. But I pay taxes like everybody else. And I would at least like to see a patch done and last at least a year. And that's not asking too much. Okay?
All right. Yeah, thank you for your comments, sir, and I understand your frustration. I appreciate your frustration. You know, I can't speak as to why the patches haven't lasted, but all I can commit to is talking to our maintenance superintendent and our maintenance staff, going out there and getting some work done. And so we'll be looking at doing that now, because I understand you cannot wait a year for actual pavement rehabilitation, a larger project come through and fix it. So again, I'll look into it and have our folks go out and do some work on it.
So thank you for the question.
I didn't get an answer.
Well,
I can't give you an exact date on when we're going to actually do
Yeah.
the patching and how long it's going to last. I have to talk to my maintenance staff, and we're going to go out and look at it, and we'll get the work done.
But
I
I
can't
tell
give
you,
a date today.
I tell you what I think might be worthwhile. So we want to make sure we get your name. I'm going to speak for Richard, and Richard, you can correct me if I say this wrong. Let's get your name and your number so that he needs to call his maintenance supervisor and figure out what they got to do. And then if I could ask CDOT to give you a call so you can get that information, because what you're asking for is a schedule. And I totally appreciate it, but there's no way he can give you a schedule right now. He's got to go talk to his maintenance supervisor, and then he can get back to you. So before you go today, let's make sure that Richard has your contact information. Okay?
I understand the schedule.
Yeah. I have no idea.
I don't have the specifics on what was done and why.
No, he's Richard is the Region 2 director. He actually runs the whole CDOT department for the Southeast. He's not the engineer. I mean, he might have an engineering background. I don't know, but he's the Region 2 director. So.
I have to maintain the roads in Turkey Canyon. I have to fix patches. And I know what it takes to fix a patch.
Yeah, but you don't have the weight. You don't have the weight.
Yes, I do. I have the weight on the normal inside road. But you're right. I don't
Yeah,
have the weight as much.
I appreciate, my name is Scott Thompson, Little Turkey Creek homeowner. We all know the truck traffic. I appreciate Schmidt Construction. We've used their material. We've all used building material. So we can't have it both ways. So in a modern society, we need material. We've all dealt with Hitchrack Ranch. We've got 2 quarries down there, Martin Marietta and Schmidt Menzer Quarry. They're taxpayers. We appreciate them.
There's three. There's one further down past Penrose.
Oh, well, God bless. So, having been a son, being a son of an engineer from the state of Michigan Highway Department, I've been, as a little kid, I've been raised with enough knowledge to, obviously the weight of the truck traffic, I'm assuming all the core borings, they're dealing, that the weight of the truck traffic is of primary consideration for the stretch of road, correct? And so now we've got a major construction project that we have to fund. So if we don't get it funded, then we're kind of back to squares. But and I appreciate, we all drive the road. We know what it is. But the fact of the matter is the weight of the truck traffic and the speed at which it's going is why a patch is not going to have the longevity.
Okay, now, I don't agree with you because it's an engineering problem. That's all it is. You can figure out how much the truck weighs, you
Yeah, but what's the substrate below the surface?
Gentlemen,
Yes, indeed.
if you guys might be kind enough to, instead of having a conversation with each
Correct.
other, if you could direct your question
Correct.
to Mr.
So
Zamora, I'd appreciate
I'm just here, my question is, I'm assuming, based on core born, I already asked this, the weight of the traffic, the truck traffic specifically, is of primary consideration in the analysis stage. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the vehicle weights are a huge thing that go into the pavement design in the
Exactly.
analysis. And so again, I can't speak to
Exactly.
specifically why some of the patches have failed. There could be some deep or soft spots that I'm not aware of. And given our maintenance crews don't go out and do full depth, really deep kinds of fixes,
Right.
are hoping, as part of this project, that's the engineering work that we're doing now, is to design the pavement structure, reconstruct where needed, and go as deep as we need to in order to make it last long. But by the same token, we do need to do a good job of patching and use our resources effectively. So I commit to going back and talking with our maintenance staff and figuring out what happened, identifying additional locations, and making sure we can do the best we can to make it last through the next year until we can actually get the construction project underway.
In being on an HOA board, God bless you both. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Hang on, just a second, sir. I think we have got another gentleman who wants to ask a question.
Bill Baker, and I understand, I don't want to get into the weeds here, and we're getting into the weeds now, about how long a patch lasts and so on and so forth. The 3 quarries are not going to go away. They're always going to be there. CDOT knows they're there. The county commissioners know it. All of our elected officials know it. I want to take a view of that road at 30,000 feet. That road needs to be 4 lanes. And that road needs to be made of a material that will handle the traffic that is currently on it. And the amount of traffic in the last 10 years has more than doubled. I mean, you've got the numbers, but it's way more than doubled. The other point is those trucks are always going to be on that road. So we have to build a road that will accommodate those trucks. Now there's another small issue, and again, I don't want to get into the weeds, but most of those trucks are allowed to carry more weight than they would normally carry. So that needs to be brought in. But I think we just need to get Highway 115 funded and properly built. And it seems to me like in the last 10 years, it's just a Mickey Mouse approach to it. And I mean, that's not your fault, but we've got to get the funding, we've got to get the thing done so it works properly for everybody. Fatalities are high. Traffic is growing. We've got a big housing project going in on the north end. That's going to bring in, as I recall, 225 homes and a couple of very large apartment complexes. And people go back and forth, Colorado Springs, Canyon City, Pueblo, for jobs. So we need to take a look at the entirety of Highway 115. Thank you. I do appreciate everybody being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. And I think it was you and I, 2 years ago, we did our own little informal time study on the trucks that were going up and down that road. And really, this is for Lisa Hickey's benefit, being on the Transportation Commission. So it was a fully loaded truck filled with aggregate coming from the quarries, driving into Colorado Springs, averaging about 1 truck a minute. That's actually how many trucks drive on that road from the quarries south of where most of these residents are, going through that area and then coming into the Colorado Springs area. And the construction in Colorado Springs is only going to accelerate, so it's actually just going to continue to get worse. And one of the challenges that I see in that area is that all of these roads going into these residential areas, and there may be an exception or two, but a lot of the roads, it's just a residential road right up at a 90-degree angle to the highway without a deceleration lane, without an acceleration lane. And then they got these trucks with huge amounts of weight barreling down that highway, and they're trying to get in and out of that highway. And it's just frankly flat out dangerous. It's just dangerous. So, but I thought it would be important to make the point about, for those that haven't seen that highway, how many trucks are on that highway filled full of aggregate, and it's a lot. So,
Chair, and let me just briefly respond loudly. Thank you. I've heard a couple of really important points so far, which are trucks. Trucks are too heavy, too many, and they're going to stay, so we need to build it robust. And certainly the fixes need to be robust. But second, the acceleration, deceleration lanes, which CDOT knows that's going to be part of the design. And maybe it would be helpful to talk about where, in particular, just to confirm what they probably already know as to location that are critically important for those lanes.
thank you. And Mr. Steer, I think you had a question you wanted to come up?
So my input is specific to acceleration and deceleration lanes. Old Canyon City Highway Road is a very small road with not a heck of a lot of traffic in and out. However, in the summer months, because we run a campground with 200 plus campsites, et cetera, most of the traffic comes in and out at Rock Creek Canyon Road, which is great. But we do get, especially people coming up from the south, from other states, Texas, et cetera. We bring a lot of tourist dollars into El Paso County. And some of them want to turn left across, getting onto Old Canyon City Highway to get to our business. So it's important for us that CDOT consider a left-hand turn lane. You're not going to have a light. We don't need a light there, but you need a left-hand turn lane so that those older gentlemen driving those gigantic rigs with not much acceleration and a ton of tonnage are trying to get across the southbound traffic going 75 miles per hour on the 65, or in the 60 actually. So we really want to make sure we get a turn lane that makes that safe for those tourists.
And it looked to me like, Richard, you made a note about that particular intersection. And Representative Bradfield.
I thank you for being here. I thank everybody else for being here. I personally feel that this presentation was extremely general, and I think that the conditions of 115 have been known for a long time. So I had hoped that you would come with some specifics, and so I'm going to ask for some specifics. Some of these intersections, what are the plans for those intersections? And if you could identify that, I think these people would like to know that this is first thoughts or second thoughts, or this is the plan. Thank you.
And thank you. And with that in mind, I am interested in having that discussion as well. Could we go to that chart that had there you go. So Richard mentioned these are the intersections that you're planning on looking at. What I want to make sure is, first of all, that we're not missing an intersection.
And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to go in the weeds here. I said I wouldn't. That isn't all. You allowed an individual in a private lot to access 115. That's not listed up there.
Yeah, and so these are some of the major intersections that have some of the higher volumes that we're looking at right now. In terms from an access
I'm
perspective,
not saying you did it. I'm just saying that CDOT allowed, and I live on 115. If I were to cut a road from my house onto 115, I would imagine all heck would break loose.
So
But we have a resident in Red Rock Valley that put a driveway on 115. That's not listed up there.
yeah, and we haven't listed, these are, again, the major intersections that we're looking at from an engineering perspective.
Are there more than one? Okay.
Yeah, these are the major intersections right now that we're looking at. In terms of specific access to 115 and those kinds of things, Jason, I don't know if you would want to address, how the access permit process works and those kinds of things.
No, we do a pretty good job of capturing all access and new accesses to the highway. So we have maintenance patrols. If something pops up, they always kind of check with us. And so, not everyone knows that you do need a permit to connect to the highway, so we'll reach out to them. So I don't think we have a big problem there. Any specific questions on access permitting?
Yeah, the question was, I don't think that access 115 with a private driveway. Can I answer that? I mean, I think you're in charge of controlling the highway. I don't think that's controlling.
Well, so if, we work with the county and land use, if we can get cross-access agreements to really reduce the amount of access points to the highway, it's safer. Sometimes people are landlocked, so we do have to provide access to them. It really depends specifically on.
Well, I live on 115. If I cut a driveway from my house to 115, I would think you guys are going to come in and say, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah, we'd sit down, start the access permit process with you. Yeah.
So, my question is, when we allow that kind of access on 115, we just contribute to the problem.
Right.
We don't solve a problem, we just add to it.
No, and ideally, we want to consolidate and share access as much as we can. Agreed. It's safer. Operationally, it's better for the highway.
Basically, there are laws we have to comply with too.
We have to give them access.
I have an answer to that question, honestly. That driveway was put in specifically because their existing driveway was too dangerous to get out of their house, okay? So they got a variance from CDOT to cut that in.
Oh, you okay? All right. So with that in mind, actually, I think, go ahead. You have another question? And then I think there's a gentleman up here that wants to ask a question, so please go ahead. Yeah, I'm asking you, yes.
Okay.
You're at the mic, so go ahead.
Okay. Look, I understand funding. I understand collecting the data. But now you and I both know the truck traffic's there and it ain't going away. And it's going to increase. And so CDOT needs to do a detailed study of what does it take to build a road to hold the truck traffic, and you need to multiply it by a factor of about 10 based on the data you got today, because it's going to increase. It's not going to get any less, okay? So then what's wrong with the patches is the substructure. Everybody knows that. Any engineer knows you ain't got the substructure to do it, and when you put the patch down, it doesn't work. Now, we are looking, based on what you've told us today, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the future before we're going to get that road done the way it should have been done. Now, the road was built a long time ago, didn't have that kind of traffic. It now has that kind of traffic, and there needs to be a detailed analysis of what does it take to build a road to support that. So I would like to see a schedule that says, here's when we're going to come up with the analysis. Then the problem is funding it. And now I have heard that we have funding, it's in reserve and it's not being used. I don't know. But at some point, the citizenship is going to have to get behind this and fund the proper road construction. We don't know when to start. We don't know when you're going to have a proper design that would support that. None of this says that. You didn't tell me how you're going to do the repairs in the interim, because we're looking at 5, 10 years of repair on that road before you can fund and build a proper road to handle that truck traffic.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that. Again, what I want to make sure is that Richard and you exchange contact information, so when Richard gets to some of these answers, he can get them to you right away. And Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but on that highway, right, on the north side of the highway, on the north side, near Colorado Springs, it's 4 lanes. And then on the south side, kind of closer to Canyon City, it's also 4 lanes. So there is a section of the highway where it narrows down to 2 lanes. And I think that's where most of these residents have access in and out of the highway when it's not a 4-lane highway. So and I don't know how long that 2-lane section is, but it's probably at least 10 miles, if not longer. So.
Yeah, and so you're correct, Commissioner. One thing I do want to point out again, it's not going to be 10 years before we do a job. We're anticipating construction in summer of 22. All the data we're collecting right now in terms of pavement condition will support the design effort to advertise that project. And so we're hoping in January, roughly, of 2022, we will be advertising for bids for a contractor, and construction will begin in spring to summer of 2022.
Sir, if you don't mind, we got people waiting to ask a question. If you would like to come down, let's hear your question.
First off, I just want to thank you guys for having this meeting. It's really important to us, and we really appreciate you guys doing this. First question is, we do have those driveways on 115. What considerations are being made for those driveways? Because ideally they wouldn't be there, but unfortunately they are, and some of us do. It's the only access we have. Some of us have kids. We can't get bus stops. If we did get bus stops, they shut them down real quick. First off, what considerations are being made for those driveways? Second off, we're talking about widening from mile marker, was it 38 or 39 to 37.5? I can't remember which is great, absolutely necessary. But what kind of considerations are we making south of there? Because it does no good to increase just a section of traffic flow when they hit the choke points down south. It gets real easy to get miles-long traffic on 115 if just one thing goes wrong. And one of the big issues we have is people get stuck in this traffic, they get angry, they want to drive fast. That's when the accidents happen. The high traffic itself isn't the problem, it's people's responses to it. And unfortunately, they're going to do what they're going to do. What considerations are we making to accommodate those responses? Another question. Actually, I think I lost it.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I think the chart did say moving from 2 lanes to 4 lanes from mile marker 37.5 to mile marker 39. So, and that, of course, that doesn't change the rest of the highway that's 2 lanes. And again, it's at least 10 miles. So that's 1.5 miles of at least 10 miles. And it's probably longer than 10 miles. So I think your question was, you know, what about a conversation? And maybe this is, if you will, kind of a constituent request. What about considering more than just 1.5 miles going to 4 lanes? I think that would be one of your questions. Would that be correct? Okay. So, and I don't know where that sits as far as money and all of that, but I think it'd be great to formalize that that's a question from a resident there to make sure that we have that on the list.
Okay. I mean, just to answer your first question, in terms of analysis, we're looking at the entire corridor all the way from Penrose to Colorado Springs, basically. Now, in terms of what we're going to be able to fund for construction, you know, that's a different kind of animal. But we are going to be working on the design for that. And again, I just represented Brandfield to go back to your question, too. I don't have exact specifics because we are so early in the design process right now. We are seeking feedback early in this design process. We're actually just out doing field survey right now, collecting all the data we need to start doing the engineering in order to put together a set of plans to advertise in a year. So.
And with that in mind, right, you're seeking feedback. So here we are in an opportunity for citizens and residents to provide feedback before the design is not only not completed, but actually in the very early stages of even beginning. So I think we have some feedback here about what about making the whole thing 4 lanes, or at least going further than the 1.5 miles.
Right, and I heard the other question, you know, those individual driveways that do have access, you know, what can we do from a safety perspective? You know, just because there's not a lot of volume, the individuals have the same safety concerns of, you know, a truck barreling down behind them. And so we'll be looking at that. You know, I can't say exactly, you know, if there's not adequate shoulders in that area, you know, we're going to be looking at the shoulders to at least providing a safe place for refuge and those kinds of things too. So.
Also, my last question, what kind of considerations are going to be made with the construction for traffic flow during the construction? Because there are literally no detours. You shut down any single portion of 115 and that's it. We do have a few roads that actually connect and circle around, like Old Canyon City Road is very important. The roads through Red Rock Valley are very important. But we don't have one continuous detour there. So what kind of considerations are going to be made for traffic flow to make sure that we're not delaying it too much during construction?
Yeah, those are all considerations when we're putting together the set of plans. Again, it depends on what kind of pavement material we use. You know, if we end up going with concrete, we haven't even made that decision yet. You know, the phasing plans look quite a bit different for concrete versus asphalt and those kinds of things too. But, you know, it's definitely going to be a consideration. And, you know, as we get further along in the process, as I said, we're going to come back out and talk with you guys, and we can talk about some of those very, very specific elements at that point in time.
And I would say, I mean, you have a detour. It's just a terrible detour because you got to drive all the way down to Canyon City or something, right? Go almost all the way to Pueblo, then come back on I-25. So a 8-mile driving distance turns into, I don't know, 60 miles or much longer than that. So you have an option. It's just a terrible option.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's real easy to get to where there's no option if they shut down the whole highway.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions then? Because I think what's very important about this meeting is making sure we get citizen input at this point for CDOT so that they can get that on a list and start trying to figure out how to work through that list. So thank you very much. Next one, sir.
Hi, Greg again from Juniper Valley Ranch. Probably the main thing I'd like to see is if we could get our intersection put onto that, it's probably mile marker 29.5, due to a business and then resident just to the west side. So we have turn in east and west with no acceleration or deceleration, with a quarry exit a quarter mile south. So, Chief Wright, you could probably help me out with this. I think 2 summers ago, we had a lady and family turning into the restaurant. The other car behind them decided to get onto the shoulder, semi behind it, not paying attention apparently, nowhere to go. Goes into southbound lane, clips a southbound lane, a northbound car, and hits the car that was in the lane turning into our restaurant, which they're supposed to be. That's a pretty serious problem and could have been a pretty serious accident. Fortunately, no one was seriously hurt, but we all know there's deaths on the highways too. So we'd like to be considered that. And is there more of a future plan than just this repaving, widening in certain areas? I mean, we've been in business for 70 years. This is our 70th season. It was built prior to the highway coming through, so there is no easement. I mean, it was basically built to the restaurant, the highway is. If they're going to 4-lane it at some point, which we assume is probably there, I mean, the next generation coming up, my kids now, do they plan on taking the restaurant over, or is it going to get bought out, or is there a future foresight there? A few of my questions.
So I think, are you the owner of?
Yes.
Yeah, by the way, your food's awesome.
Thank you.
I've eaten there. So there's a question about.
And one other safety idea, and I'm sure it's been thought of, what about just a concrete barrier between lanes? Has that ever been considered, or is it, seems like that'd save?
Yeah, it depends on specific circumstances, but it's something we can definitely consider. In terms of your specific intersection for your restaurant, you know, we'll take a look at it. You know, I can't make a promise today. We'll take a look at it. We'll circle back with you. And, you know, again, we're looking to do everything we can to improve safety. I mean, that is our #1 priority. You know, I've gone to your restaurant, had the opposite issue. Cars back behind me trying to make a left into your restaurant, going southbound.
Right.
It gets kind of scary, so I definitely understand the concerns.
Sure.
And before you head back to your seat, can we again go back to that chart that has those intersections? Because I think what you're doing is you're suggesting adding an additional intersection.
Would sure
right?
like to, yeah.
So you've got an intersection you're talking about. You said I think was it 29.5?
About 29 and a half, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
And
I'd like to
I've
make
got
sure
it written
that you
down
got it.
as Juniper
Okay.
Valley 29 and a half
Yeah.
on my notes on the
Okay.
slide.
Okay. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Please.
Steve Savico. I'm a 20-year resident of Red Rock Valley Estate. So we've seen it when it was 2 lanes down there, what they used to call Dead Man's Curve, and thankfully we haven't lost a life down there in a lot of years. I've since become a volunteer fireman and EMT and been on the call at Juniper Valley Ranch where 7 disabled kids were traumatized by getting rear-ended by, almost clipped by that semi. Thankfully nobody's hurt. So anyway, most of our accidents we see are where we ever have choke points, the calls we have to respond to, or wherever those narrow bridges or where there's 2 lanes coming merging to 1. So people just don't like yielding, and so that we tend to have the road rage or people maintaining their lane and force people into other lanes. That's where things tend to happen. So I don't know if you're giving any thought to that all the way down to Penrose, and if you're prioritizing the merge lanes and get rid of those. The other thing we've noticed is wherever somebody has to decelerate in a traffic lane to make a turn, because there is no center open lane, there's no 5th lane where people can accelerate or decelerate. We have that problem with say El Corto, where people try to turn in there. You have that as an intersection. So I think you're probably thinking about that. The same thing happens, decelerate and go south into Roca Roja and our valley. There's just not enough shoulder or no center to really pull off to. The other 2 things are more nuisances. One is, as a resident down there, I can tell you the traffic noise, since we've raised the speeds. You know, it used to be probably a 50-mile-an-hour curve for trucks. It's now 65, 75, 80 for some of those, especially when they're unladen or unburdened, they're coming south. Up to 80 miles an hour, making that turn. So we get tons of noise starting at 4 a.m. and finally rolls off about 4:30 or 5. They get off the road before, most of the truckers get off before the traffic gets really bad with commuters. So I don't know, in that valley, it's a box canyon, we tend to have a lot of echo reverberation. I don't know if there's anything you could tell us about the viability of a sound wall, or what could be done with the macadam, or the type of surface you're going to use, how that is considered in your design. That would be helpful to at least understand what the options are, and if there's anything could be done based on the geology down there.
Yeah, you know, we'll definitely take a look at the noise. You know, it's not an easy solution. You said that's a canyon area that you're talking
Yeah.
about. And so everything just echoes back and forth
Right.
through the entire kind of thing. So sound wall is probably not going to be very effective, but we can look at what we do in terms of driving surface. You know, again, that might fix some of the tire pavement interaction noise, but in terms of, I'm not sure if you're experiencing Jake brakes and, you know, some of those kinds of things
yeah.
too.
We got acceleration, you know, we got open pipes, you know, we hear the motorcycles, everything, but the ones that start earliest in the morning are obviously those trucks coming in to load up.
And so, yeah, I mean, we can talk with our partners, you know, CSP and, you know, also the county sheriff's offices, you know, because use of Drake brakes, you know, we can sign it all we want, and there are some signs up and down the corridor saying that they're not allowed,
Enforcement.
but, you know, it becomes an enforcement issue somewhat too. So we can coordinate with those partners as well.
I think I'd like to also make a point on that, right? These trucks are providing a service to the quarries that are down there. So a conversation with the quarry owners as well, to ask the people that are providing a service to the quarries, these truck drivers, hey, look, these residents are putting up with your noise all the time. We're asking you to abide by the speed limit and don't use Jake brakes where there's, I think there's signs that say don't use Jake brakes, right? But I think they're generally ignored.
Well, the
So-
muffled Jake brakes are fine. It's the ones that,
Yeah, but I do find it interesting, right? 4 years being a county commissioner, all 4 years, every time I've come down to your fire station and so forth, this is a common theme, the noise. And, you know, like a sound wall is a big deal and it's expensive, but it's probably something to at least look into. But I'd say, if not that, at least we should be asking the quarry owners to tell the people that are delivering rock for them that they need to abide by the speed limit and they need to not use Jake brakes where it's posted to not use Jake brakes. I don't know if that'll help or not, but that's one of the problems.
that would
Yeah.
be wonderful. And along that same line of the quarries taking some responsibility, they're in business, we understand that. But all that aggregate that they're hauling doesn't stay in the trucks. You're following it, it's falling out. I don't know how to get people off the road. I've hit them at the red lights, saying your gate's open or you're leaking. But I don't know if the quarries could do something to help police their own debris, because all of us are losing windshields, about one a year. You know, insurance won't even change a windshield anymore, or they'll drop me. USA won't do anymore. They're just tired of it. And it's with 4 vehicles, it's every year. So we're taking, at any rate, there's a lot of aggregate on that stretch up to Fort Carson. It's better after that, because I think they have to hit a red light, slow down. You don't have that problem south or north of Fort Carson. But we certainly do down there in the turns, and it just spills over or it falls out the gate. If they would sweep that, I know I've asked DOT to do it, but I know that's another expense. But the ones who are really causing the problem are the aggregate delivery trucks.
And before you head out, if we can go to the chart, I think that had the bridges that are going to be looked at, and I don't know if it was before or after this chart. But there was, well, maybe, yeah, okay, so I know that there's a line on there that says bridge replacement at Rock Creek, 38.6. So I know there's some bridges that are obsolete, out of date, and narrow. So at the bridge point, there's no shoulders. It's just 2 lanes because the bridge was built a million years ago or whatever, and it's not really up to standard for the highway anymore. So I wanted to ask Richard, it looks to me, if I'm seeing this, on those bridges that are very narrow, that's part of the scope of your design work about addressing the narrow bridge, these narrow bridges. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe Rock Creek is probably the worst one from that perspective. And so that one is actually going to be fully replaced. You know, the other ones, they might have some narrow shoulders, but they at least have some shoulder. And, you know, if they're not, I mean, if they're still structurally sufficient in our terminology, a structurally sufficient bridge or a non-structurally sufficient bridge isn't going to fall down. But it's something that we want to keep a closer eye on and keep looking at over time. But so that we're looking at replacing that Rock Creek Bridge for sure. That is actually going to be completely reconstructed. And then we're going to be looking at doing rehabilitation on several other bridge structures, whether that be, settling approach slabs, bridge joints that are starting to pop up, those kinds of things too, and trying to get those addressed.
And just in our experience, just somebody was complaining about the overlays not lasting and some of the patching, but we've at mile, what is it, Keaton Valley Ranch is what, mile marker 37? 37. I think you had contractors come in there and fix that. There was an expansion joint that was out of whack, and so it was a big G out for everybody went over. It would just, loads would dump and trailers would scurry across the road. Anyway, you had contractors come in and fix that, and that's been 10 years, and it's wonderful. And we've seen anywhere the contractor, when you contract it out, I don't know if it's cheaper than having your crews do it or not, but it seems the duration of the repair seems to be much, much longer.
And sometimes, to be honest, some of our folks, we don't go in, in the middle of winter and go and do like a full depth asphalt patch where we saw cut and do everything. We're just trying to put something in the hole to buy us some time. And that does happen on occasion just because the hole has gotten so bad we can't do anything else at that point in time.
And if I could ask a question, so for that Rock Creek bridge, I'm really glad to hear that you're talking about completely replacing that bridge. That'll really help. But can we maybe make the assumption that that replacement is considering the idea of making that bridge long enough so that you could install a 4-lane highway? And I don't know if that might actually be part of the design at that point, because that's at 37.5. So actually, no, I'm sorry, 38.6. So actually, from 39 to 37.5, you are already talking about making it 4 lanes. So that has got to mean this bridge is going to be rebuilt to 4 lanes and shoulders. So that's actually awesome. I mean, that's really good.
Yeah, it will be brought up to full standards as of today, or, the current times.
Anecdotally, anywhere we've had 4 lanes, we rarely have, unless somebody crosses over their lane into the opposing lane, we really don't have as the EMT has to show up on those things. We're not having the fatalities and the serious injuries. You have people walking around talking on their cell phone after a rollover. So it's a lot safer than it used to be. We appreciate that, and I know safety's way up high on your list, and obviously we appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, Felicia Grillo from Rock Creek Mesa. First of all, I'd like to just say something. The new development is not a done deal as far as residents of Rock Creek Mesa stand. We are in opposition, strong opposition. So, but I have a couple other comments here, and it has to do with wildlife and the CDOT project. Rock Creek Bridge in that area is where they found the Mexican spotted owl. And now to the east, they have a preservation thing going on. But I do know that we are all in a critical habitat, and I'd like CDOT to acknowledge that they will do whatever they can to make sure that the nesting areas, and if there's other animals right there, that they will be protected. And the second thing is, according to the Wildlife Division, and some other people I've talked to at CDOT, Highway 115 is the #1 animal vehicle collision area east of the divide. And right? So would you consider putting in animal bridges, wildlife bridges? I know there's a couple that go under in the Rojo area or something, but I would really like to see, I know it's very expensive, I talked to CDOT before, but I think that it would be the right thing to do. And then that also goes to Fort Carson, some of the animals go over to them, so I don't know how that would work, but I would love to see bridges. Oh, fencing?
You have to have wildlife fencing before you can do any access. So,
I mean, we'll be looking at all those issues, wildlife vehicle interactions.
Protect our wildlife.
Yep,
Okay,
are
and especially
a
our
huge
owl.
safety issue for us too, and a huge concern for us. So we'll be looking at that, in terms of, fencing, if there's a need for some additional crossings, whether that be over or under, where we funnel with wildlife fencing to
Thank
those
you.
areas.
And so I'd like to also bring up that we are at Pawnee and 115 and Cherokee and 115, and I don't know the mile marker, the fire chief might, but we would like to see all of that extend up to us too, because we pull out of our area into the acceleration lane and then we see deer and whatever on the floor, on the ground, and it's very upsetting, but if we
So
protect them.
to make sure that we truly understand the comment that you just made. Can we go back to the intersection chart? What I want to do is find out if, so
What
the
mile
roads
marker?
that you just mentioned, they're not up there, are they?
No. Chief Hart, do you know what mile marker we're at Pawnee and Cherokee, approximately? 40?
About 40?
40. It's up to 40.
So that's another intersection that the residents would like you to take a look at.
Right, and I just wasn't sure. You said that those were major, so, okay, thank you. And then also, I guess that's my last question then. Was there a survey done at Pawnee and Cherokee? Do you know of that, or, I know it's not a major one, and we feel safe enough at our intersection. We have the acceleration lane. One person was clipped once when it was new. People drive crazy when they get off work at Fort Carson, across from where the May Museum is. We see them kind of come up on the road, they start gaining speed, and a lot of them will come into our acceleration lane, actually. So maybe there can be some more signage that says, stay in the right lane, or something like that. Right, because, yeah, they're coming up and they are going in that lane. So, maybe we can get a windshield tax credit. And I think, and I don't know if this is a CDOT thing or not, but is there any way that you know of that there could be a rail system from, say, Thinking Green here, and trying to get people off the road a little bit? If there would be a transit rail system or something that you know of that could go from Canyon City to Penrose and then up to the Springs, just to get people off the road and they could have parking rides.
So I can, just to respond to that, the answer is, on the one side, that is not in the near future, but on the other side, there are several boards and commissions in the state that are constantly looking at that. It's a difficult question because the investment requirements are huge. Billions and billions of dollars are needed for that. On the other side of the coin, it's inevitable that it'll have to happen, because as the Front Range population continues to grow, you're just going to eventually get to a point where you just can't widen roads anymore. There's no space to widen the road into. So going to some measure of some type of a bigger, badder, meaner public transportation along the Front Range, it's inevitable someday. And all of those discussions are all ongoing right now.
Maybe agreements with other rail companies where they can use existing rail systems and put passenger cars on there?
Just as recently, I think as yesterday, I think I saw a Gazette article that Amtrak might actually put passenger rail or use the existing rail and put passenger trains going north and south. And I don't know, that might end up being maybe a consideration for commuters as well. So usually the best option in my mind about that kind of solution is private industry delivering it, because if they can can figure out a way to do it and be economically viable, then it's going to happen. Then the only thing that would get in the way would be the government, not acting well enough in order to allow them to do it. So that, I think, the fact that I saw that Amtrak discussion is very encouraging to me. So I'll say to you, it's inevitable. It's only a matter of time. It's just more about when than anything else. And I think Lisa Hickey, your transportation commissioner, wanted to make a comment to that.
Thank you, Chair. Wise words about public transportation, as you mentioned, and this is my opportunity to say there is legislation being considered. You've heard about the federal legislation, but also at the state level to fund our roads and bridges a lot more. And so the more you can do to talk that up, the better. That legislation will also necessarily include public transit options, because our use of vehicles over the roads is far exceeding, and will continue to, our ability to build them and maintain them. So we need to get some of the cars in the long run off the road from coming through your area. And so that will be part of the plan, and to the extent you can think long-term about that and provide input to these boards and commissions that the chair was talking about, that will be very helpful.
Thank you, ma'am. That's another reason why we shouldn't have our development go through. I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your time, and I thought it was a great, even though it's very general, it'd be 5 hours long if it was specific, so I get that, and I appreciate your time and your effort. Thank
Well,
you.
again, thank you very much. Again, I think what's really important is for CDOT here to be getting feedback from you all, because you live that road every day. And you've got maybe some intersections, right, that are not on this list, or some other ideas or suggestions, you know, like a sound wall and all these other points that you're bringing forward. Making sure that bridge gets widened, the possibility of, you know, it would be expensive, right, to turn that entire section from 2 lanes into 4 lanes. But maybe that is actually really appropriate, because I heard, and I don't know if CDOT has some study data on this, but where the road has been transitioned from 2 to 4 lanes down in Canyon City and up near Colorado Springs, if I heard right, that's where the accident rates have gone way down. And it's still in this 2-lane section where the accident rates are still really high. And I'll just, I know we've got more questions, but I just want to, how many people have lost a windshield so if I'm looking right, I think it was every single person in this audience has lost a windshield on that road. Okay.
Dan, I'll be real brief here. Part of the reason that we have a lot of windshield loss is the patching is falling apart. I live at Menzer Quarry, and I see how those trucks go out. They're inspected and they're swept before they ever go out on the highway. So the people that think that all the rocks are falling off these trucks, I mean, maybe they do, but I think there's far more windshield damage to the fact that the substrate on the highway is falling apart. And like I said, I live on Menzer Quarry. I see how the trucks go out. They're tarped. They sweep them. And the other thing that I would like to point out, I've lived there 10 years. There has not been one fatality involving a truck. It's all passengers or a kid on a motorcycle doing 120 miles an hour. And the only fatality that I know that involved a quarry truck was a guy that swerved over into the quarry lane and hit him head on. So, you know, let's understand those trucks are here. They do a responsible thing. They take care of our community. We have to have them. We need to build a road to adapt to the truck, not the other way around. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Please, next.
My name's Jen Hansen. I just am coming from the perspective of a mother of a young child, one who's still in school and one who will be driving soon.
I'm just going to help you out. Just
Okay. Like, don't move it for me. I would like you, well, thank you for giving us opportunity to provide feedback while you're still in the early stages, while you're still gathering information. That's really helpful. And we really look forward to the next meeting. I would ask, because we are one of those houses that have no other access to our home except for our private drive off of Highway 115. We're the driveway directly after Glen Rock. And you're right, all those intersections there, they need something, but so do people with individual driveways. And what's driving my passion on this is the fact that my daughter can't have her, like I told you earlier, she can't have her bus stop there because it's so unsafe. Somebody's already taken out our boxes, our mailboxes. So we have to drive to get her to and from the bus. Thinking long-term for younger people who are going to be moving into the neighborhood eventually, who are going to have more children in the neighborhood. What are we going to be doing and keeping in mind for school bus safety on the highway? That's a huge deal, especially as we're expanding the neighborhoods there. Not everybody has the opportunity to have a feeder road or anything to one of those intersections. And so the acceleration and deceleration lanes and the left-hand turn lanes would make a huge impact for those school buses. Because right now it's so unsafe, we can't actually, the school shut it down because it's so unsafe. And if something were to happen to my mom, we're both working parents. So if she was not able to take her, actually, and if the May Museum was not kind enough to have a bus stop there that all the residents could use, we would have to figure something else out, which is a lot of dollars. So just please keep in mind as you're expanding these things that you consider the school bus needs, and not just for my child and who will be driving in a couple years, who I'm afraid for her safety driving on that road, but for all the other families that are going to move to the area in 10, 20, 30 years who have those private driveways that don't have an opportunity and they need their child dropped at their driveway.
Okay, yeah, I took a note of school bus safety as something to be very focused on in terms of the design of the project, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next one. Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am.
I'll be brief. My name's Jim Dickey, and I'm part of the Juniper Valley group. But what I haven't heard today and part of the conversation is I've lived out there long enough that I can remember my kids could play on 115. So the road and the bridges aren't really designed to handle the kind of traffic that it's getting today. Why is it then that we allow the truckers overweight as opposed to the interstates?
And so, you know, a part of the scope of this is actually to do some more weight enforcement, or provide a safe place to do weight enforcement. So part of the project is we are going to be identifying an area to actually be able to have mobile scales, so CSP can do the weight checks and those kinds of things too. So
Yeah.
it is an issue that we recognize, and making sure that the truckers are adhering to legal load limits is important to us as well.
And thank you. If we could go to the chart that, I think go back a chart or two, or maybe it's 3. So there's something on there about a weigh station
Yes.
on one of those charts.
I'm trying to find it. Dang it.
So wherever that is. Oh, there it is, the third bullet at 37.7 miles.
But what he's referring to is that we have weight limits, but then there are exceptions to that. So we are legally allowing the trucks to carry more weight.
Okay.
That's his statement.
Yeah, they're carrying
They're
more.
not breaking the law. They're
They're not breaking the law, but we've issued them an overweight permit that we don't allow on the I-25. This is a secondary road, but when the road's not designed to handle that kind of weight.
And
Okay.
that's the point. The road is not designed to handle
Correct.
that kind of weight.
Correct.
That's what we need you to address. Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I
Thank
did
you.
misunderstand your question, sir. And so if they've been issued an overweight permit, we'll have to work with, we don't control all the overweight permits at CDOT either. So we'll have to work with, the enforcement officials that do that permitting and get that. But in terms of a design perspective, we are gathering the information about what those weights are so we can design the pavement appropriately for those weights.
I think the point is well taken, right? If they're issuing overweight permits, then the road has to accommodate those overweight permits.
Correct.
If the road cannot accommodate that, then whoever is issuing the overweight permits should perhaps stop doing that.
And typically, from an overweight permit perspective, they look at bridges most critically, just because those can't fall down. They don't necessarily consider the pavement nearly as much in that, but they are looking very, very closely at the safety of the bridges to make sure that they're not going to be overloaded.
And thank you, ma'am, for coming.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me speak. Felicia Grillo has already addressed most of what I'm concerned about. The wildlife down there is important for all of us, especially since we're so close to so much federal land, open space, and the state park. I'm up from the north end. Off of Pawnee and Comanche is where I go out when it'd be more convenient to go straight out, but due to the arc of the it's 4-lane through there, and thank you very much for that improvement years back. It has helped. However, the arc is so steep right there that our family has found it safer to go over a block to Comanche so we have a little more wide views due to the traffic speed that they're going. However, the turn lane when you're heading north into town and you go to enter that turn lane, if there is a car in the inside lane heading north, forget it. They're over into the entry lane. Even though it's not the correct lane for them, I don't know if it's the arc of the road right there or what, but if you sit and watch, you have to wait until there's no car in the inside north lane, because they're always where the road is built for entry off of Comanche, excuse me. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
That's my concern.
Just to make sure I understand your concern, ma'am, it sounds like you have a northbound acceleration lane coming out where you make the turn, but cars are
Correct.
encroaching into that lane that are already on the highway. Is that
Correct.
Okay.
And so the only way you have to watch and make sure that lane is empty beside it, because they don't stay in their own lane. The way they arc that hill right there, they're in that entry lane, every car.
And so where this lane is that you're referring to, do you have the mile marker? Is it in the
It's
high?
off Comanche, right
It's
up.
off of Comanche.
Comanche and Pawnee are both basically at the crest of the hill.
So I think that's at the 40 mile.
Yeah, it's at
Yeah.
the very north end, 40,
Oh, okay.
39 to 40.
I believe that's the name of the road. I know Pawnee, but like I said, I go up a block and come off of Comanche, which is just a few hundred feet, actually. Cherokee.
She's talking about the same intersection as us when you're coming up from the May Museum North. And then what she likes to do is go on the Cherokee exit, turn north, but you have to be very careful because the acceleration lane is actually up at Pawnee. And that's where the military, I want to say military, and I was military, so I'm not blaming anybody, but speed is actually a huge aspect to that. And that's where I was mentioning, if at maybe the May Museum and the military, the new stoplight, you can say, stay in right lane, traffic coming on, entering from the west, or something like that, because they're coming up real fast and coming across that line. And if you're in that lane, matter of fact, Kathleen, one of our neighbors, she was the first one to get clipped right there. Totaled her car, actually. But other than that, it's pretty safe. But,
Right.
so is that where you were talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think necessarily, I'm not asking for a light, but you can't tell each person individually, watch out, that's an acceleration lane, that's not a third lane in the middle of the road. And I often think it's the arch of the road or something, because even if they're not going fast, they're in that lane. So that's my concern right there, that
Thank you. Richard, do you
That
think
be
you have
noted.
that one captured?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the suggestions I think you made was, maybe sign in for through traffic, keep right.
yeah, traffic entering, something.
We'll definitely look at that and see what we do differently there.
Right, maybe bumps in the road right there so that they know they're in the wrong lane. There might be a car entering, and
Great, thank you. And to your point earlier about wildlife, and this is for Lisa Hickey's benefit. So there's an enormous amount of wildlife in this area because to the west, it's National Forest and
BLM. It's all
yeah,
BLM.
BLM land. So this is actually a major wildlife transition area, and it just adds to the complications of this road. Between the heavy truck traffic, a lot of intersections without acceleration or deceleration lanes, lots of wildlife, and they just all combine together to make a perfect storm, basically.
thank you.
Anybody else with questions for CDOT? Okay, Richard, if you'd like to close up or make any additional remarks?
Yeah, again, I would say, if you have some other thoughts or ideas, there's a bunch of business cards for Scott Schnocke sitting up top. I don't have as many with me as he did, but I'll leave some of my business cards as well. So you can feel free to contact us. And, we look forward to, as we further develop this project, coming out and having another conversation with you when we actually have a lot more detail to be able to tell you exactly what's going to be in the plans or what we're proposing to be in the plan set. So thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you. And I'd just like to mention that we do have another elected official that has come to join us, and that's Commissioner Holly Williams over here. So she was listening in at the end of the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very, very much for coming. This is obviously the beginning stage of a project that CDOT is going to be working on here. I'll also make the recommendation that you get to know Lisa Hickey, your Transportation Commissioner for Region 2. She is key and critical in making sure the funding is captured and retained for this, so please take the opportunity to get to know her. Thank you very much, everybody. We're finishing about a half hour early. I appreciate your coming. And please stay engaged with CDOT as this process goes on so that we get the best design on this road possible. Thank you so much.